Big 10 Plus 4 is a member of Odd Pods Media and ASAP All Sports All Plays Network.
I'm not really sure how we start off this unique episode of Big 10 Plus 4, college sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar, blue blood. If you're joining us on the visual medium, you know exactly what we're talking about, a surprise. I'm not going to lie, I was actually looking down at my phone for some final notes just to throw in my head, and I look up and I thought we were malfunctioning with some kind of just bad trip. What did we have? A parrot, a monkey, and what else?
No, that was a penguin.
Penguin.
And like an emperor penguin. A fuzzy rabbit. And
rabbit. That's what I saw. Yeah. I just looked up and saw them boogieing out to the Big 10 Plus 4 theme music. And
so you didn't see the part where it went, every time it went boom, 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 it would come in with them and go out, and then come in with them and go out. You didn't see that part?
I did not catch. I was not paying enough attention. Like I said, I was looking down, getting the final couple notes, and I look up and was surprised by our visitors, our guests today.
And you know what the funny thing is I'm sitting there. I can see all of you since I produce it. I can see everybody, and I see Tony. He's just staring at it like it's normal.
Yeah, and Tony hasn't even reacted yet.
No. Well, you know what the best part is I'm in other tabs as this is happening, so I just look as if I'm
something else.
Yeah, so I have no idea what Dalton is talking. I'm like, what is he talking? Now, since I can also produce, I see that there's a joke intro, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to watch this after we finish because I want to see what they're talking about.
Yeah, that was quite the way to kick off yet another episode of Big 10 Plus 4. That's Sam Sprunger there on the far right on the visual medium. Yeah. Tony Hollinsworth in the middle. I'm Dalton Shetler. A lot of basketball to get to. We're finally kind of putting football behind us and fully going into Big 10 basketball. Both men's and women's side really heating up. Some interesting things going on in both areas. Don't really know by the end of it, too, what to make of Big 10 men's basketball, because it seems to be just a bunch in the middle, and I don't really know what to make of it. In Big 10 women's basketball, there's a lot to still try and figure out, too. I mean, the way you're seeing teams kind of fall and some different things going on, a couple of milestone things happening this past week. So we're going to be getting to all of that here this show. So let's start off with Big 10 men's basketball, where there's only one team ranked in the top 25.
And where's it at,
Big 10 men's basketball. That would be in West Lafayette, Indiana, just like we all had before the season. That Purdue would be there.
Where in the polls?
Number one yet again.
Like the Big 10 has the number one ranked team, and that's it.
I didn't look. That Purdue doesn't have Rutgers this week, right?
Not this week. Not this week. They do have. I don't know if they've got them. I think they only have them once this year, but
okay.
So they may be safe the rest of the season.
Yeah.
From
I don't
know.
Purdue has Michigan State on Sunday at Mackey, which of course that was a 1-point game the first time they played this year, so that could be interesting.
But you said the magic word there.
Mackey,
yes.
And since 2014, I believe Purdue's won every Michigan State game at Mackey Arena. So again, though,
put this in, I think it might be the venue, because Michigan State is winless since then at Mackey, and it's not all against Purdue.
Yeah, UCLA in overtime in the first four during that COVID season. That one still hurts. UCLA went to the Final Four that year, if you remember right, and lost to Gonzaga with the Jalen Suggs halftime or half-court buzzer beater. Oh my gosh. Anyway, though, but yes, the Big Ten has only one team ranked in the top 25. First time since February 16th, 2004 that's been the case, when Wisconsin was number 12.
Still in my 20s.
What a time it was for Sam Sprunger. But and nonetheless, I mean, we're talking about a year where we keep looking at the bracketology and checking in with Michael DeCourcy and some of the others and what they have.
Still and the same amount of teams.
8 or 9 teams making it into the big dance and only one team ranked. again, I don't really know how to do heads or tails on Big Ten men's basketball right now.
Is it possible though, Dalton, that it's because it's that normal, like Purdue this year at least is an anomaly. They're not performing like the prototypical Big Ten team where they've struggled at times, but they've come through and won, but they're not losing to teams yet. I'm going to preface this by saying we're only halfway through the season, but they haven't shown the characteristics of a typical Big Ten team, but the rest of them are. They're just beating the living daylights out of each other back and forth. I mean, Wisconsin lost to Northwestern.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think
I say that to knock on Northwestern, but Northwestern had lost 3 in a row. Iowa lost 3 in a row and then won 5 in a row. I mean, they beat up on each other so badly that Purdue's just kind of an anomaly out of the realm right at this moment, and the rest are being typical Big Ten teams.
And a lot of it to me, and what my take on it is this goes to show this year's a great example. When you lose all the NBA talent the Big Ten did as a conference this last year, to me, the Big Ten by and large has the best coaching across the board that any conference in the country does. And I think what you're seeing this year, like with the Northwestern, I mean, Chris Collins is making it happen. And this isn't a slight on Boo Buie and Chase Audige and some of those others. I think they're talented, but to be playing at the level they are, where they're, I think, above 500 right now in Big Ten play, I mean, that's exceptional. Wisconsin, that's been the MO for a while. We're going to come in preseason ranked 9th or 10th in the conference, end up winning the whole conference. I just think the coaching across the board has this league really kind of in fits night in, night out, because everybody's giving your best shot. Rutgers, look at them. I mean, that's a team you don't want to play. And it's really based on attitude, energy, and culture. So I think coaching really gets the nod here. We haven't went to Tony yet. Tony, what are you thinking about this Big Ten? Do you have a takeaway here?
That he didn't get to see the joke intro.
I know. He's right? Rewatched it 3 times already while we've been talking in the open.
I know. I've been trying to figure out a way to watch it without y'all knowing about it being recorded. It does. It says a lot as to the respect that the Big Ten Conference earns as a whole. And I'm looking at the overall conference standings right now for all of the conferences. The only conference that has every single team that has an overall winning record is the Big 12. After that, there's only one conference that has one team that has a losing overall record. That's the Big 10 with Minnesota. Other than that, everybody has a winning record. We're one of only 2 conferences to say that a majority of our teams have a winning record.
Well, Nebraska doesn't have a winning record, but they don't have a losing record either. They're 10-10.
That's true. But hey, it still counts. It still counts.
It still counts as not being a losing record. You're right.
Exactly. But no, much to your guys' point, it says a lot about this coaching, and just very similar to the football season. Every time we think that we have a potential, second favorite behind Purdue to really be, that standout team, they end up getting beat by somebody, whether it's Rutgers, whether it's Michigan State, it's Illinois, Minnesota got the surprise win over Ohio State, and Ohio State has kind of fallen off a little bit. Iowa has fallen off a little bit. So it does say a lot to the Big Ten as far as everybody is still competitive when it comes to facing each other.
Well, and I would like to point out, though, because I do believe there's a distinction between what Tony just laid out and what's happening now with Big Ten West football. I feel like for the most part, you had underachieving the talent that you had. Mm-hmm. And I think you can look at certain programs out there. Now, there are great coaches as well. And what Jeff Brom did at Purdue, that absolutely is commendable. But like across the board for those 7 teams in that division, like that was a lot of
coaching.
It was a lot of incompetence at times, like from those teams. And that's what made it competitive, where in Big Ten basketball, there is not a single easy night. Like for football, when the East crossed over and Ohio State was playing against whoever, Minnesota, anybody else, Iowa, anybody out there, like it's just like, okay, what, you know what I mean? Like it's a different league. Big Ten men's basketball, there isn't a single team you want to face right now. The one you can maybe point at is Minnesota. Minnesota's roster is really
and Ohio
thin.
State lost to them.
Yeah, as Ben Johnson is still trying to kind of get things going there in Minneapolis just in his second year. But like, look up and down. Penn State, you don't want to play Penn State. You don't want to play Rutgers. You don't want to play Wisconsin. You don't want to play Iowa. You don't want to play any of these teams.
Rutgers can stay away from Purdue for like the rest. I mean, if we play again this year, it'll be too soon.
Even Maryland, first year under head coach Kevin Willard, I didn't really see that coming, and they're a force to be reckoned with. So I think it really goes to show top to bottom, the coaching in the Big Ten is extremely strong. But it's a fascinating scenario where you have one team in the top 25, but you might get 8 or 9 into the big dance, and that's what the Big Ten's looking at. But that also goes to further the narrative, because the last couple of years, the Big Ten has had some early exits in this big dance. And if this is the collection that goes into the tournament right now, I don't think that you have really a team maybe even in the Final Four.
I was looking on Twitter actually right before we started, and I saved the graphic from a tweet from oh no, I didn't. Still have it pulled up. That's what it is. Okay, no, yeah, there it is. From CBB Analytics. They have the pie chart or the graph of where teams set up offensively and defensively in conference. And somebody underneath, and Purdue is at the top at both ends, so offensively and defensively, which is why I'm saying that they're kind of the anomaly, not the prototypical Big Ten team at this point, because normally you have a team that's either really good offensively or really good defensively, not first in both. But somebody put on there in the comments, well, can you do it against out-of-conference opponents? Because this is why we think that the Big Ten doesn't perform well when it comes to March. And I don't disagree. I don't disagree that there's something that doesn't correlate into March with the style that the Big Ten plays in their season.
And a lot of people point to that as the reason why the Big Ten falls short in March. And I think there's something to it. And again, you look at this collection of teams, and I mean, we mentioned Purdue. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not sure how much confidence I have in Purdue in making a late run in the NCAA tournament, because we've seen Matt Painter with this model before. A big man that's surrounded by shooters, and it hasn't really worked for the Boilermakers in March. Their deep run to the Elite Eight before you get going, Sam, was led by Carson Edwards when he just got hot and dropped 40-some points.
Like
Virginia.
Kimball Walker hot. Like that's how stupid he was out of his mind when that year.
Like insanely special, but the runs like last year ended by St. Peter's when everybody was 6 feet tall guarding Zach Edey, and it worked. Like the Purdue has not been able to advance with this model. Isaac Haas, it's a different story because he got hurt.
Right.
I mean, if you give
I
a little
think
bit,
they would have done something that year if he hadn't hurt his elbow. Yeah, I mean, he would have just he was dominant as well.
But you get what I'm trying to say here. Like I'm not sure I have confidence in this working in March yet. It works for the regular season, and honestly, if I'm looking at philosophies and I'm like, okay, I can plan for what could be anywhere between 1 and 6 games, or I can build something for the 30-some games to sustain. Like, I'm taking what's going on there. I'm just saying I'm not exactly sure how that works.
I get that, but I would argue this year's Purdue's team, since we've seen them perform and see that they're going to perform at a high level now, I would say this is a better team than they were last year, only because, not talent-wise, but in spite of not having the same amount of talent, they're a better team. So while Zach Edey is the hub and the pace setter, you don't have to rely on just him to make a play. You've got your shooters that can set up, that he can pick out. You've got the 2 freshmen that are creating and playing amazingly good basketball, to where now you have more than just, and they're a year older, the ones that are returning from last year's role players. So they're a stronger role. So I don't know if maybe this is maybe a stronger case for me, in my mind, as a Purdue fan, that we don't have a Jaden Ivey to go create points. Hey, Zach Edey is a point maker because he's just always so big. If there's somebody that's counteracting him, Purdue's found a way to beat the teams with the rest of the guys.
Well, and I think that's a great point to kind of argue against myself, is that Purdue's had good and great big men, but they've never had one this dominant in the last however long.
I don't see, if he keeps on this pace, how he's not player of the year.
Nationally?
Yes.
And I would agree with that, to be honest with you. I don't have a counter to that. I'm with you. But let's go ahead now, since we're talking about some awards. When we come back right after this small whistle, we're going to take a look at kind of the midterm report card because we're halfway through the Big Ten season. So let's go ahead and get to the second quarter. All right, so we want to take a look as we're about 10 games in. I think most teams are at 9 right now through the Big Ten slate, but by next week when we go to do this, they'll be at 11. So this is our chance at doing the midterm report card here on Big Ten Plus 4 for Big Ten basketball. So we wanted to take a look at a couple of things. We wanted to take a look at, as of now, who would be your Big Ten Player of the Year, who would be your Big Ten Coach of the Year, who would be the Big Ten Freshman of the Year, and who your first team selection is for Big Ten basketball. So I think I'm prepared. I will fully admit in the last 24 hours, I have made a change on mine. I've made 2 changes
on your specific
first team.
Oh, first team. Okay.
Yep.
So your OYs are all
the same.
Still the same.
They have not changed, but my first team has had 2 adjustments, which I feel really prisoner of the moment about, but I think they're ultimately the right deal. So we could start running through some of these. Now, Tony has been a cat dad this morning, so I'm not sure if Tony has all the accolades ready to go. No. Okay. So we'll kind of throw both Sam and I's out there, and Tony, you kind of grade and see who's got the better midterm report.
Ooh, you're
card.
the
How's
teacher
that sound?
today.
Yeah.
Yes, I like it.
Okay. So where do we want to start? What would be the best area to start in?
Since we talked about coaching, and I will posit that I could make an argument for a lot of West Lafayette people in this list.
Well, and this is where I think we're going to get a little boring, is that I tend to agree with some of this. So I think we're going to have some of the same answers.
We're going to have to talk about others that would be in contention for it, because nothing's a lock at this point to my thought. But if you're given the halfway point, it might get a little boring.
Yeah. So let's start with Coach of the Year then. And I'm assuming I know where you go, but go ahead.
I'm going to say Matt Painter, and it's because Purdue was supposed to be 5th in the Big Ten. Like, they weren't even supposed to be in the top 4 of their own conference, and here they are sitting at the top of the country's. They're the country's number 1 team, and they're 19-1. That's the best start in school history. Granted, he has all those parts that we just talked about, but he is the coach of them, and he's the one that recruited and put them in the positions to do what they're doing. So if I would say there's a second, I love Kevin Willard. I've been talking about him at Maryland since he got hired from Seton Hall. I would say what he's done at College Park is pretty damn amazing with the kind of, cluster that he had walking into it. And so I would say if I put a number 2, it's Kevin Willard.
It's interesting, and this is that will actually create a difference for us, which is going to be nice. But in 7 years,
I know where you're going for number 2. But
I'll see if you can guess when we get there.
Okay.
But in 7 years of covering Big Ten basketball, and not necessarily like as a fan just watching, but like being at the games, really being in the machine of Big Ten basketball and being a part of these, this might be the easiest Coach of the Year award, given where we currently are, to be handed out. And it is Matt Painter. I mean, there's no doubt about it. These are always graded on like where your preseason expectation was and what you do. So much to your point, being preseason 5th or 6th in the Big Ten and rising up to number 1 in the country, doing what they're doing. And losing an NBA lottery pick, a top 5 pick, and losing Sasha Stefanovic and Williams, and being able to do this with a couple of freshman guards, like 100%. As of right now, it is Matt Painter. My second choice, though, you're guessing is?
I'm guessing we're going to State College with Micah Shrewsbury.
We're not.
Or it's Piscataway then.
Piscataway, Steve Peichel, and the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, because right now you look at the Big Ten standings and the difference between 2nd place and 13th place is just 3 games. Like we've been talking about, like you have Purdue, you have Minnesota, 2 different ends of this leaderboard, and everybody else is fighting within a hair of each other from 2 to 13, which
literally
is really
you go on
incredible.
a 2-game losing streak, you could go from 2nd to next to last. Like it's that easy.
Yes. So all that being said, for Rutgers to lose Ron Harper Jr., to lose Geo Baker, to lose Rutgers has always been a team that's overachieving given the talent that they had there in Piscataway to begin with. You lose some of the better ones that the program's ever seen. And now look what they're able to do. They're second in the Big Ten. They're the first team after Purdue in the Big Ten standings.
Now
your argument got to be Steve Pikiell.
Your argument there, Dalton, is counteracting against what you said just a second ago, saying that Purdue's way up here and then everybody else 2 games within 2 games, and Steve Pikiell's standing on the top of that one with his team. Like that's.
But that's a hard fight to get out of.
It's just fun. The correlation, but
to be fair,
go ahead.
He is one of the few that could say that because one of his big accomplishments is he's the only team that has knocked Purdue down so far.
Yeah, IU has him to thank.
Yeah,
to not being, at this point, them being the only undefeated team. Because how much would it grate on IU fans for Purdue to be the next undefeated team? So, like, Rutgers winning was there. Here's the thing. I think it might be my overall feeling of the last 2 seasons of playing Rutgers that I didn't maybe put Steve Pikiell above Kevin Willard, but I really do like Kevin Willard and what he's done there. So that's why I would say.
And I don't think it's a bad choice. I just think Steve Pikiell would be your second. And much to your point, I love Mikey Shrewsbury and what he's doing.
I know you do. That's why I thought maybe you were going there because he's still. Penn State, they're 13-7 overall. Yep. I mean, they're good.
They're not doing anything wrong, but what Steve Pikiell and Matt Painter have done this year is just, to me, off the charts.
And I wouldn't disagree with that.
With Coach of the Year ballots in, we both agree on number 1. But Tony, who is right with number 2?
Oh, we're fighting for number 2.
Yes, we are.
We have to. I do have to agree with Dalton. I think I'm going to go with Steve Pikiell. He's done great with Rutgers. Again, Rutgers has been one of those teams that nobody really wants to face this year. Nothing against Sam's choice because hey, y'all remember I said it this year. I was like, watch out for Maryland and Rutgers still, and so I prefer both of them. Although I am going to throw a little bit of a monkey wrench in there for both of you. Okay. Who do you give a midterm report to for the most underwhelming coach of the year so far? Who has kind of disappointed the most?
Mike Woodson.
I really would need some time to chew on this. Let me pull up those.
I guess that was alpha reactionary because IU has had injuries that have kept them from performing. But I just to being the preseason pick to win the Big Ten, albeit a down year, and for them to be sitting at 4-4 in like 8th or 7th in the conference, that to me is really underwhelming. Maybe. No, I'd say Mike Woodson.
My pick.
Sorry.
Hang on before you say your guy, just in case we're thinking the same. My pick would be Chris Holtmann right now from Ohio State.
He was going to be my other one.
3-6 in the Big Ten.
3-6 in the Big Ten.
This was a team that was projected, I believe, to be top 5 before the year in the Big Ten Conference. They have talent. They haven't had injuries necessarily to point to the same way that Indiana and some others have. So it's just issues there. They lost to Minnesota, as we mentioned. It's Minnesota's only Big Ten win. And last night against Illinois, it just never really was an
ugly.
Game.
It was only a 9-point ending, but that game was. I looked up in Illinois; it was up by 19 at one point, and I'm just like, goodness gracious.
So
this is
Ohio
an Illinois
State's
team
really got problems
too.
Yeah, Ohio State's really got problems. So I land there. But when I said Chris Holtmann, it seemed to surprise Tony. So who were you thinking, Tony?
I honestly thought y'all both maybe would say Juwan Howard, just with how Michigan is supposed to have been favored, supposed to have started out the last couple of years, and kind of the same result the last 2 years. They've been just kind of mad. They've been like middle of the pack.
I wouldn't argue that, except for they're sitting at 5-3 in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
They have a winning record, but it's a very underwhelming compared to what they were projected. But honestly, they're sitting right where they were projected to be in the Big Ten race.
Well, and as inconsistent as they are, I'm going to be honest with you. I just don't know what to do with Michigan. I don't know what to do with them or how to grade this. Like, we're talking about a team that lost to Central Michigan, barely beat Eastern Michigan. Like, it's had moments this year that have looked extremely rocky, and in other moments where they look really impressive. I just don't know how to grade them. I really don't.
Can I say, and this is not at all a joke, I will give them more of a bump. I will give Juwan Howard more of a bump if he doesn't get in trouble somewhere the rest of the way this year. If he doesn't have a run-in, if he doesn't have, some sort of a thing that brings him national attention and not in a good way, kind of like the past 2 years, I would say maybe he's improved, even though maybe his team hasn't performed as well, because you know what? Some of this has to go on to the players too. It has to. But you as the coach, you're the captain of the ship. You go down with the ship. I get that. But I honestly, if you can see some of an improvement from him, and I don't know, I haven't been paying attention enough closely wise to see if he's had any sort of issues with technicals and stuff. But honestly, if he stays out of trouble, I would say he's had a better year than the last two combined.
You say, well, we'll find out February 14th and February 26th, because those are the 2 days that they play Wisconsin. So
and here's the thing, maybe it's my oldness, to where you should hold yourself to a, hey, can I not getting any big national attention from me being a jerk?
Well, and especially when you're the role model, you're the leader for a lot of these young men. Like, you're the guy that a lot of these people follow, and you have two of your sons on the team.
That's what I was getting ready to say. And now you can say, these are your kids, literally your kids that you're setting the example for. So be a better person.
Yeah.
So we are, I'm looking at the clock. We're running heavier than I expected, which is good. It means we're having fun with this little game show.
We don't have headlines, so we can put the women's topic if we wanted to move it to the quarter four.
And I think that's what we'll do.
So it's got its own quarter.
But we got one more award for this first half, or do we just want to save them all for the second half?
Have we
behind
done
the
player of
scenes
the year
look for everybody. We have not done player of the year yet.
Okay, so yeah, let's move to this and do the three players of the year.
Okay. So we got player of the year, we got freshman of the year, and the all Big Ten first team coming at you right around the corner here at the midway point of the Big Ten basketball season. Stay with us.
You are listening to Big Ten Plus 4, hosted on Anchor and StreamYard.
Hey, this is Grab and Brisket Podcast. Join us every Monday where we talk about the latest trends in barbecue, interviews with world top pitmasters, celebrity cooks,
like Wee Man from Jackass,
and musicians.
like Rich O'Toole.
So check us out. We do beer reviews, barbecue fails.
So many fires.
Dude, a lot of people just burn their houses down for no reason.
We also talk about cocaine hippos versus Meth Gators,
Learn how to make some tailgate gravy.
altercations with Texas Rangers.
People throwing Reese's peanut butter cups.
Yeah, so check out grabthebrisket.com for podcast info, viral social media posts, and so much more.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith. Everybody knows at the root of any good relationship, any relationship worth anything, is the only thing that matters between two people. And I'm talking about television. That's right. That's why you should listen to Married with Television, man, which is a podcast by my friends Shannon and Jamie, I call her cat ears, about movies and TV that they have loved for decades, man. You listen at marriedwithtv.com or anywhere you get your podcasts. They are proud members of the Odd Pods Media Network, man. Married with Television.
All right, the second half coming at you. We'll start with the third quarter, and we're going to pick up again with our midterm report card. So we're looking at 4 different areas. Really, I guess we should have made 5. That way we could have had a winner by the end of this. Tony is grading Sam and I's
We didn't have a defensive
cards.
Player of the year. Do they have that in the Big Ten?
They do. They do. We could.
I don't know that I know enough of.
I was gonna say,
I'm kind of surprised because I think I already know who in Sam's mind is going to be the offensive player of the year, and he's also the defensive player as of right now statistically. So,
okay, so let's start with player of the year to start this third quarter off. Sam, who do you got as player of the year? And I'm imagining we're gonna liken up here as well.
It's Zach Edey. You can't do what he's averaging a double-double. He's leading the Big Ten in scoring and in rebounding. He's a presence. Literally, you can throw it into him. He can hold it over most people's heads and then just sit there and decide where he's going to throw the ball or if he's going to go up. He makes the decision quick, but it's his bullet passes. They're not Trevion Williams good, but they're still pretty good for a 7'4" guy, and the fact that he can see over everybody, boom. And he does a good job getting getting the ball. He out rebounded Minnesota when they played. Like, that's how good he's doing. So I don't know that there's any chance in my mind. I don't even, honestly, the way he's playing, number 2 that I would say is Trace Jackson Davis right now.
Interesting. Okay. And I'm having a hard time coming up with a second, but I'm with you. Zach Edey is number 1 for this award.
Yeah.
And this is an award that a lot of times has some drama behind it too. And I don't think there's any drama but between who's number 1 versus number 2. It's just who's second. Like, that's the conversation we're having here.
Yeah. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, because while it makes it boring to kind of talk about and argue, because there really isn't an argument, it's a good thing to have the conference have that sort of player and dynamic to be able to bring to at least that spotlight of the conference.
Yeah. No, so Zach Edey gets player of the year from both of us. If you're looking at seconds, Trace Jackson Davis is a good one. You could throw in there maybe Chris Murray from Iowa and what he's done
now,
so
I've
far.
been looking, and he's average. He's only 0.2 of a point behind Edey. Is he being as dominant as Keegan was, or is he doing this more quietly?
It's pretty similar.
Okay, so we need to start looking for him to have a big upsweep near the end of the season then.
Because Keegan, I mean, it's funny that you say do it quietly, because both Keegan and Chris as twins, they have mirror personalities in terms of they quietly go about their business. Like, honestly, we talk about role models, like the Murrays. That's great role models.
You could go a lot worse,
watch.
is
like,
what you're saying.
Oh,
much worse.
I don't know if you can do much better in terms of the way they handle themselves on the floor. Like, it's never flashy or taunting. Like, they just handle their business, and it's really cool to see. So
I again, I've seen the stats. I don't have the ability to watch every game on a regularity. So a lot of what I'm seeing is the box score. Okay, I see Murray did well. How dominant was he? And so that's why it's nice to be able to see, because if he's going to be like Keegan, and then at least there's more of a competition. You know what I mean? And so I'm not opposed to that.
I think it makes it pretty commendable too that Chris is able to do this, because the pressure that was put on him was, hey, you're Keegan's twin, you're going to be Keegan, right? Like, or
as Fran McCaffrey said, he could be better than Keegan. Holy crap! Did you just say that about me? He was a number 5 pick in the draft,
and these two were not offered scholarships coming out of high school, so they went to a prep school down in Florida, stayed an extra year, and then got offered, and Iowa offered, and of course, the Murray's dad, Kenyon, played at Iowa back in the 90s.
I remember Kenyon.
and now Keegan and Chris really have been following suit. So, Tony, we both agree player of the year is Zach Edey. The second pick, this was kind of back and forth. I'm not really sure I'm 100% in with mine. I don't know if you're 100% in with yours. But
no, because he just kicked it up recently.
Yeah,
so it's not like he has a full season's body of work. It's just like the last 3 games. And if honestly, there's no real big, huge standout.
No,
Zach Edey.
I agree. And so Sam went with Trace Jackson Davis of Indiana. I went with Chris Murray of Iowa.
Davis of IU.
Ooh, I say I'm gonna do. I'm going to do like a tie on this, because I do agree with both of you. Like, you look at Chris Murray, Murray has kind of had an underwhelming season. And I would say that really for a majority of the Iowa team. Like, this was a team that we kind of saw coming in. Again, we didn't really favor them to win the Big Ten, but we didn't expect for them to be kind of where they're at currently. And then, same with IU with, Jackson Davis, phenomenal flashes this year, but you're also kind of left wondering, like, what else can they do?
Dalton, is it possible that you're seeing the one season from Chris Murray and Tony sees it as a little bit of a down year simply because the overall team isn't performing the way that they were expected?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where we're landing. And Iowa, the thing to keep in mind is they've had some issues, like with Patrick McCaffrey stepping away from basketball for a little bit with the mental break. So, like, they've had some different variables going on there. And to be honest, like, we talk about Michigan's inconsistency, like, Iowa fits the same mold. Like, they had a horrible loss at home to wrap up non-conference play.
That's borderline embarrassing. Like that's how that's almost. Never mind. I won't make that comparison. Go ahead.
But no, so I get that. Like it's been an inconsistent Iowa team, but the only consistent part you could really point to has been Chris Murray dropping more than 20-some points a night. So like that to me, like if Chris Murray wasn't on that Iowa team, I think we're talking about the Hawkeyes being 13th in this league, maybe even 14th. Like we're talking about them kind of fighting with Minnesota a little bit more at the bottom. So I give Chris a lot of credit in that regard. But let's go ahead now and move to Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Big Ten Freshman of the Year. I think we might disagree on this one. So, Sam, where do you go?
Is it going to be because we disagree on the wrong person from the same school?
No,
because I think it's
no.
You don't think it's at Purdue, is what you're saying. Okay. Now, I would say that Braden Smith is my freshman of the year, and it's because he stepped into that point guard role for the number one team in the country, essentially allowing them to get to number one in the country and run that thing like he's been there for 3 years. He seemed to fit in very well with the pieces that are already there, but yet still performing at a very high level offensively, with points, with dishing, assists. He does get rebound. He is probably the hardest. You guys don't remember Porter Roberts at Purdue, but he averaged maybe your 2 or 3 points a game, but he had a 2.5 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. He would be that defensive bug in the strong guard's ear on the other team. Like he disrupts. That to me is what Braden Smith is, and he is a freshman. I mean, he's doing what Porter Roberts was doing as a junior and senior as a freshman.
So let me be very clear. I'm not discrediting Braden Smith. I think Braden Smith has had a phenomenal season. I think Fletcher Lawyers had a phenomenal year. I do believe this is one of the areas where when a team is so good, some of maybe the credit kind of gets lost a little bit and finds its way elsewhere. And it's a little deserving in Columbus, Ohio, to Bryce Sensabaugh. I mean, we're talking about an NBA talent.
God, we're so close on some of these things because he is the next one. I talked to Tony about him on Friday because he is an amazing player. And if they would have had Malachi Branham with him, it would be Purdue and Ohio State at the top of the Big Ten. That's simply the way. I mean, he's phenomenal.
I mean, we talked about Chris Holtman and the rough year it's been, but boy, he has a knack for bringing in some incredible freshmen to Columbus because Bryce Sensabaugh right now is averaging 17.5 points a night for the Buckeyes. As a freshman, he's the 6th leading scorer in the Big Ten. Like what he's done there, I mean, he's an NBA player. I mean, it seems like it's a one and done there again, kind of shoe in with Sensabaugh there for the Scarlet and Gray. But to me, that's got to be freshman of the year. And again, it's not to discredit Smith and Lawyer. They got to feed it to the big man who's dropping 22 points a night. And it's just kind of how some of this works.
And I guess the way I'm looking at it is, and Sensabaugh, don't get me wrong, he is the guy. So like he's stepped in very seamlessly as well. But honestly, the reason why I went with Braden Smith over Sensabaugh, and then those were literally the two that I was thinking. I just thought maybe you were going with Lawyer by chance.
I do like Lawyer. I think Lawyer's won Purdue games this year.
Oh, for sure. But the way I'm looking at it is Braden Smith has stepped in to be the floor general of the team that wasn't expected to do much at all. Well, they were expected to make the tournament, I'm sure, but they're just not be great. And has been the floor general to get them to number one and has maintained it. They haven't just spent 5 days at number one. They've been there for 3 or 4 straight weeks and then came back. And he has been the general of a winner constantly. I'm not saying that it's against Sensabaugh that they're losing, but that's an added bonus to me that Smith is getting the W's along with his performance.
Oh, and I think win should weigh into this. Yeah. It's always tricky how you kind of value or gauge some of this value, but I hear exactly what you're saying. 17.5 points from a freshman per night.
I don't disagree.
That volume is,
but if you want to take freshman volume and points, now granted it's 5 points less, but Fletcher Lawyer's averaging 12.4 points.
Which is
as a freshman, which
great
is amazing.
Again, yeah.
So I'm not trying again. it sucks because I'm a Purdue fan and I'm trying to make arguments for these Boilers, but they're
Homer.
legit arguments on this. Yeah.
I'm playing with you. But Tony, where do you land?
Yeah, I have to agree with you again, Dalton. I like Sensabaugh, and I say that not against Braden Smith, but for me, Braden Smith is doing a phenomenal job for an overall great team, and he's doing what he needs to do to continue to support that great team. Whereas to me, with Sensabaugh, if Ohio State was to lose Sensabaugh, I'm kind of the same way with Iowa. If they was to lose Chris Murray, this would probably be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten right now. If they were to lose him, he is somebody that Ohio State's going to continue to really build around and move forward as really their, soon to be leader of the team. So I give it to Sensabaugh in that regard. I do see what you guys are saying about the overall wins and for Smith, he does kind of have to be that leader. But again, nothing against him. And I think that this would be a different Purdue team if he was to go down. But to me, Ohio State losing Sensabaugh would be a much bigger impact to them overall than Braden Smith losing for Purdue.
Braden Smith, I just want you to know that Tony just said you're inconsequential on Purdue's team.
Really spin this one into some clickbait. This is the 2023 way to do media here.
Hey, I'm not going after Wendy's like Dalton is, so I'm okay.
Yeah. At Wendy's, Dalton still doesn't think. At Wendy's, Dalton still doesn't think you're very good at the social media game.
Fake news. But let's go ahead and move now to the first team. And I know we're a little heavy here, but I think we can knock out some of these first steps because we agreed Zach Edey's our player of the year. Yep. So he's going to be on our first team together. You mentioned Trace Jackson Davis is your runner-up to player of the year.
He's on the top 5.
So he's top 5 for you. Believe it or not, in the last week, he just cracked my top 5. He was not on my top 5 until this monster last week.
I wouldn't have put him there either. It's what he could be and what he's done in the past 2 games. So that talent level and then what he's done makes me think that he's going to maintain that at least at the really good level, not this out of the world level.
So I agree with you. He's on the list because I think last week he had 66 points.
Yeah,
in 2 games. I mean, it's woof.
Yeah.
Chris Murray, I proposed him as a runner-up for player of the year. If you agree, we can put him on.
I do agree.
Okay, so we got 3 of the 5, and we're together on those 3. We have Zach Edey, we have Trace Jackson Davis, and we have Chris Murray. For the final 2 slots, I have no idea where Sam's going to go here. What do you got?
Well, I have Bryce Sensabaugh.
Oh, okay.
As one, I really do like him. Now it sounds like people might come at me. You have him on the first team, but not the freshman of the year. Yeah, I judge the value of the freshman more than just, hey, he can score a ton and is a real the value Braden Smith brings is what I go with the freshman of the year. So I don't think Braden Smith's a first teamer. I think Bryce Sensabaugh is, because just like you guys said, you take him off that team, they're playing JV teams is what they're doing. You put him on the team, they're competitive every game. They might be losing and not being, executing and coming through at the end, but they're at least in games against number 1 Purdue, against, all these teams that they shouldn't be if he's not there. So I think he's on it.
I already know we have a different 5 then, which is interesting, but who's your next name?
I was looking, I love the, I guess for what he's done in the past 2 years against, and see, I don't watch him enough, but I really like Cam Spencer.
This is interesting. So in the last 24 hours, Cam Spencer just made his way off my list. He's off of my list. Yes, I had Cam Spencer on, but he's had 2 rough games. And again,
I'd like to hear who replaced him, because I'm he's been on my, and I just haven't. So it's interesting. And again, not trying to be prisoner of the moment, but when we're talking about 9 conference games, 2 of them is it's about a quarter of your sample size. Yeah.
So
you've seen him twice.
Just for where we are right now, each game is very important. By the end of the year, this will all balance itself out. So Cam Spencer has time to come back up, at least from my book. But so I had Zach Edey, Chris Murray, Trace Jackson Davis. I'm going to go with Jalen Pickett Pickett's been solid on my team, the Penn State player. He's averaging, 17.5 points a game, I believe.
Yep.
But he's also number 1 in the Big Ten in assist to turnover ratio at 3.2. He leads the Big Ten in assists. Yeah, I mean, he's had a sensational year. I think he's got 7 assists a night. He's been the guy that Penn State puts the ball in his hands whenever there's a dire need of a bucket or a big play. Jalen Pickett is always there, but averaging 17.5 and 7. I mean, he's number 1 in assists, number 1 assist turnover ratio. What is he in scoring? The 17.5 is good for
17.3. He is, I just
7th.
Yeah,
I just pulled up 7th. Yep. Yeah. So Jalen Pickett, to me, I mean, he's a leader of that group there in Happy Valley. So he's on. The 5th one, who I took Cam Spencer off for. Now, this is a little interesting because recently I had Terrence Shannon Jr. on my list from Illinois. He's not on there. Mm-hmm. I went, instead of Cam Spencer, with his teammate Cliff Omori, averaging a double-double. He's 2nd in the Big Ten in rebounds. He's averaging over 10 points a game. I think he's one of the top dunkers in the country. He has one of the most dunks in the nation in terms of volume. So to me, what Cliff Omori has been, because I want to reward winning. And so I wanted to get a Scarlet Knight on there. And Cam Spencer, like I said, had been on there, but with his recent couple of steps backwards, and that's kind of harsh to say, but Cliff Omori's been consistent. Last night, I think it was last night when they won, he went 7 of 8 from the field. Like, Cliff Omori has been there night in, night out. Granted, he gets set up a lot by the Rutgers backcourt, but Cliff Omori is going to be my 5th right now.
He had 16 against Penn State in the 20-point drubbing of the Nittany Lions.
Yeah.
I'm sure you saw me react there because he is the one that I was, between him and Cam Spencer, it was the 2 Scarlet Knights. And I don't know. I guess it's the 3-pointer Spencer hit against Purdue to beat him. I think that just kind of great.
Oh, but I think Cam's resume merits definitely at least being in this conversation. Yeah. Yes, 100%. Let's go ahead now, since we are moving. Oh, actually, we got to get Tony to grade it before we move to the 4th quarter.
Yeah, I was going to say real quick, it's funny how y'all have mentioned this, because for the most part, y'all kind of followed, ESPN's like top most, scoring players right now so far. 2 players that I'm surprised y'all didn't mention. You didn't mention Hunter Dickinson, and y'all didn't. And Dalton, you started to kind of mention Terrence Shannon Jr.
He belongs in the conversation. Shannon absolutely belongs in the conversation.
For sure. But I did want to say, to kind of re-strengthen the freshman, Bryce Sensabaugh is number 6 right now. And then, again, he's doing that as a freshman. So that says a lot. I do like Sam's list, with Sensabaugh at 4. And then you also said, who did you say for your
essentially ours are last ones? They're both Scarlet Knights, and we basically are saying right at this moment that it's a coin flip between the 2. I'm taking the one side of the coin, Dalton's taking the other side.
And honestly, for that 5th one, I feel like you could honestly do that for anybody. And like you guys said, you guys had a really hard time whether or not you were going to put in Cliff Spencer, whether or not you were going to put in Terrence Shannon. So like I said, I was just kind of laughing. Your first 3 are all the same, and then it was like the last 2 you could kind of flip. And I really feel like that's the case, because then again, after that, it's kind of anybody's game, anybody's argument that you want to put in there.
Well, you got let's take a look here. You have how many? 10 players are averaging at least 15 points a game, and if you round up, you have 12 players averaging at least 15 points a game. Like, it's. Mm-hmm. In terms of that production, there's a lot in the Big Ten this year. But let's go ahead and move to the 4th quarter, since we're a little heavy. We got to get to women's basketball.
That's right.
So it's been quite the week in Big Ten women's basketball, because you had a colossal doubleheader of a slate on Monday night. You had Michigan hosting Indiana, and you had Ohio State hosting Iowa. Ohio State, undefeated, number 2 in the country, took on the Iowa Hawkeyes, and Iowa at number 10 came to Columbus and absolutely controlled the game from wire to wire and won that game. So now there's only 2 unbeaten teams left in the country, being South Carolina and LSU. The Big Ten no longer has an undefeated team, but unbelievable, that Ohio State has been undefeated for that long, but it now sends the Big Ten women's basketball race into a 3-way tie at the top because Indiana did beat Michigan. So it's Indiana, Iowa, Ohio State, all with just one loss sitting at the very top of the Big Ten standings, which is just incredible.
We're 9 games into the season. We have 4 teams within a game of one another.
Yes.
like it's a huge amount. And
real quick, sorry, but you mentioned 4
fine.
teams real close to each other across the country. If you're wondering how that kind of compares, there's 4 teams in the top 10 for Big Ten women's basketball in the nation.
That's
So
40%.
Yeah,
Everybody,
Good.
quick math.
Good math. Actually, Iowa and Maryland are tied for 10th, so technically there's 11 teams. So you're gonna have to adjust that math.
Wow.
36.
Shut up, Dalton.
I never did math well to start with, much less now do I got to do basketball standing math.
Yeah, jerk.
It's like toilet paper math. It doesn't make sense. There's no consistency.
No, this is this.
I haven't heard that one.
I was surprised. I'm not at all surprised Iowa beat Ohio State. I'm not surprised about that part. I'm surprised at the fact that they really never were much in doubt that they were going to win. They kept it at arm's length and just kept pushing Ohio State away, and then and they won. It caught me off guard just because I wasn't expecting that big of a. But I think is Iowa the best team in the Big Ten?
I would argue they have the most talent. I mean, between Caitlin Clark, who had a triple-double in that game, her 8th of her career in that win over
an incredible
Ohio State.
30, 12 and 10.
Yeah. And Monica Sinano, what she is on the inside, her last 2 games, she's missed 2 shots, and I think she's taken 22 shots in those 2 games.
A good percentage.
Yeah, let's see the math on that one, Sam.
Well, if one out of I don't know.
It's got to be north of 90. That much we know.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
But no, I think they have the most talent. But at the same time, I mean, they've lost, I think, 4 games for the year, and it probably should be 5. I'll make the argument that last Wednesday, a week ago, they should have walked out of East Lansing. They should have walked out of East Lansing with the loss. Monica Sinano fouled out in that game. Caitlin Clark shot a lot of free throws in that game that probably saved the Hawkeyes in that one, which is a touchy subject for some.
Sounds to me, Tony, like maybe there were some calls going for the star in her direction, and Mr. Shetler wasn't very happy with that.
I could say there's quite a few that weren't very happy with how all of that played out, but I would make the argument Michigan State should have won that. That went into overtime there in East Lansing. But nonetheless, like Iowa, I do believe is the most talented team, and then Indiana's just. I mean, they got Mackenzie Holmes on the inside, and they just got Grace Berger back in the last few weeks running the point for them. So, and again, Indiana's lone loss came at Michigan State. Michigan State has been a team. By the way, because so many of these teams were still trying to figure out like what they are. For Michigan State women's basketball, it's a team that was down 1 to Ohio State at Ohio State with 90 seconds left. They were tied with the top 25 team in Oregon in the 4th quarter. They beat what was then undefeated Indiana. They gave Indiana its only loss of the year. They went to overtime with Iowa
State when they were number 5 in the country too, out in Portland.
No, they played them. But it didn't go well.
Oh, okay. I thought that was one that they played well. No, that didn't go well.
No.
I apologize, Michigan State, for missing that.
But Michigan State was without one of its best players, Matilda Eck, who is actually playing for the national team back in Sweden that game. So they weren't fully loaded when they went against Iowa State in that game. But nonetheless, like this is a team that's went toe to toe with everybody, and for the most part, just hasn't gotten over that last little hump like Iowa. Purdue, they were down 12 with 2 minutes to go, or 2.5 minutes to go. Came back, tied it up, went in overtime, and lost. Like they've had 3 overtime losses this year, all at home. It's just been a snake-bitten group. And like if they can just they have the core there. You know what I mean? Like the core of the game, the core of the sample is there. It's just one little tweak to get over that hump.
It sounds to me like
different.
It sounds to me like the women's Big Ten is just as crazy, just in different aspects.
Ridiculous. I think there's 10 teams in the top 60 in the net rankings right now for Big Ten women's basketball. Like, it is unbelievable.
I haven't seen any projections. Are they still calling only like 6 or 7 for the women's?
I believe it's good question. Actually, I haven't seen this week's, but I think it's pretty plentiful, similar to the men's side.
Okay.
But yeah, it's got to be something to watch the rest of the way, because again, you have a 3-way tie at the top: Ohio State, Indiana, Iowa, and then you got a lot of these teams kind of in the middle, like Illinois. And by the way, Illinois plays Purdue tomorrow night, and then we'll host Michigan State. So you're getting a lot of good games night in, night out. But it's certainly worth your time watching, because it is something that is going on over there in Big Ten women's basketball, and should be a lot of fun. Tony, were you getting ready to say something, or are you just licking your lips?
Keep in mind, Iowa still has to face Indiana twice.
Yeah,
towards the end of the season. So
they could get split. They could go. One team could win both. It's.
And I believe Ohio State has Indiana tomorrow. Is that correct, or am I misspeaking? No, they do have Indiana at Bloomington tomorrow night. So that's a top 6 matchup. And by the way, Michigan will head to Maryland, and that's a top 13 matchup tomorrow night as well. So again, you're getting a lot of big-time Big Ten basketball this year. Definitely check out.
Well, and with the way they're performing as well, it's making them nationally big matchups as well.
100%. 100%. That'll close down shop for us here for this edition of Big Ten Plus 4. On the way out the door, Sam, Tony, the tandem duo. Let everybody know where they can find us.
Well, you can find us on the Twitter, the TikToks, and the Instagram at Big Ten Plus 4. You got to spell out the plus. Facebook, Tony, do you need to type out the plus?
No, you don't. And that's the beautiful thing about Facebook, is you don't have to do all this wasteful time spelling, whatever. You can just put in the plus. It'll put it in there.
Is that it?
And then, pretty much. You can also find us on oddpodsmedia.com. We are the only sports show on there, but you can find a whole slew of other great shows: politics, food, beer, even. So, I mean, that's like 3 great combinations: beer, politics, and food.
I've got a collab I want to do during football season. I want to get the Beer in Front podcast and grab them in the brisket to do an on location with us, so we can just have a big tailgating.
One of the games last. Yeah. Multiple birds, multiple stones.
That's right.
You can also catch us on the ASAP network twice a week. And then if you want to see all the crazy stuff, like the joke intro that apparently we did that I still have yet to see, but I'm going to see after this, you can also find us on Spotify later today.
So all kinds of places. Thanks, Sam and Tony. And again, that will do it for this edition of Big Ten Plus 4. Thank you so much for tuning in. And for Sam Sprunger, Tony Hollinsworth, and myself, Dalton Shuttler, so long. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.